Hey there, David Chesworth coming to you from Hilton Head Health on the beautiful Hilton Head Island, and today we're going to talk about motivation, how to get motivated when times get tough, and we've got the perfect guest here to talk about that, Fawn Germer, who is a motivational speaker, a 4-time Pulitzer Prize nominee, has been the best-selling author of 9 books, has been a keynote speaker for nearly 100 Fortune 500 companies, and is a co-host of Hard Won Wisdom Podcast, which is sponsored by the National Women's Leadership Network. Man, did I miss anything?
You forgot my best qualification to be here. Yes, I have had a weight problem my entire life. And I am someone who loves Hilton Head Health more than anyone else because it has been with me for decades. If you've never been to Hilton Head, you get the sign on the interstate that says how far to Hilton Head Island, and there's kind of this panic. Now, once you're off the highway, it is a ways before you get to Hilton Head Health. But when I saw that sign, I looked at Rebecca and I famously said, "Give me that pork." We had to do one last binge, right? And then we get off the exit and we pull over at a dumpster and get rid of the rest of the big sample platter from Woody's, because you can't show up at Hilton Head Health with it would be like going to the Betty Ford Clinic with a bottle of vodka or something. So there was all of this anxiety about doing it, and the next morning when we went for our blood tests, we're kind of starting to talk to people, and what an experience and gift that has been. And then to be on the program here and speak for so many years has just been such a gift in my life, because it's not scarcity, and if you don't have full motivation, you will find it when you get here, because everybody wants better for themselves and everybody's trying, and so you've got this tribe right there with you.
Right. Well, you brought up another interesting phenomena that I've heard many times before, that Last Supper type experience where you feel like you're going to go to Hilton Head Health and you're never again going to be able to have the joys in life nutritionally or from a food standpoint. And it's a funny, common reaction that we get, but it couldn't be further from what we teach here.
Oh,
yeah.
I don't do that now.
Yeah.
Because I know I'm never going to be hungry. The food's going to be great. And that, I love coming here for a tune-up, right? I really had everything in check for 3.5 years. Then I got COVID and I got a little fluffy, and it's like, I got to get to Hilton Head. And, it doesn't matter whether you're trying to lose 20 pounds or 200 pounds. And David, you didn't know me in the beginning, but I used to weigh more than 100 pounds than I weigh right now. And so, God, I can't believe I said that out loud. I don't usually tell people that. But that's a big thing in my life. It's a big...
You've kept it off.
Yeah, well, but still there's that little fight to not be fluffy. But there are people who have big challenges here and people who have seemingly small, but to every single one of them, it's just as important. Nobody feels uncomfortable, and you really find your motivation when you are here. And the best thing about it, and really this is true whether you're here or just starting a diet, but it comes down to the core of motivation, and that is, if you just start, you feel like a different person in 2 days. Swear to God. 2 days, because you're doing something. And it does feel better, even if you're at the way other end of the spectrum. And one thing I love about the program here is they make it so that it's manageable. And that's a big part of motivation. Because if you say, I'm coming here and I got to lose 100 pounds, well, that's really intimidating and it's scary. But when they talk about if you can just lose, what is it, 5% of your
3 to 5%.
Yeah, of your body weight, it makes a significant impact on your life and your health. And whether you're trying to find motivation for this or any new thing, that's the thing. You break it up into baby steps and you just start, and start ugly. I don't care about waiting for the right moment. You're never going to be as young as you are right now, and how much more of your life are you going to waste? If the reward, the sacrifice is you don't get the joys of the junk food anymore that I mean, we know they're horrible for us, but for some reason they taste so darn good, right? So you don't get that. But it is replaced with a feeling of wholeness and health and happiness that it's worth so much more than that. So it's such a great retreat, and the program really works for people. I'm always moved when I see people coming in who have big challenges, and they're in there fighting it and fighting for it. And I think a lot of them didn't know, just like when I showed up on the day of Woody's barbecue, they didn't know what they were getting into and were a little wary, and it doesn't take long before the buy-in comes.
Just after, whether it's here or somewhere else, but just starting, after the first couple of days of doing it, you feel so much better. Yeah. And you feel more motivated. And that's something that we talk a lot about here, and I'm curious your take on it too, which is that action is really the fuel for motivation. And that a lot of people wait to feel inspired or for motivation to come to them. But I really love how you articulated it. Sometimes you just got to start ugly and make that first action and kind of court and go after the motivation.
Yeah. And it's one step at a time. Life is a real interesting walk, isn't it? And when you think you've got it figured out, something happens to shake it all up and remind you that you don't. And one of the things I have learned is that it all comes down to your ability to just take the next step and the next step. And that's metaphorically and physically. I had a really bad year in 2013. I lost both of my parents 3 months apart, and had an end of a relationship, and bought this move-in ready house that was just a disaster on the budget, right?
Wow.
And so it's all happening at once, and at the end of the year of grief, I was still depressed, and I wanted to get my way out of it. And so what I ended up doing was walking, and I started at the southernmost beach in my county in Florida, and I live in Pinellas County, which is everything from St. Pete to Tarpon Springs, so St. Pete, Clearwater. And I started the southernmost beach, and every day walked 7 to 13 miles a day, put my bike at the end, and then would walk to my bike to the car, and the next day pick up right where I left off until I had done 70 miles. I even kayaked out to some remote islands to walk, took a ferry out to an island, and a friend dropped me by boat on an island. And the reason this story is relevant, I know you're wondering when she's getting to the point, is this. I got these feet, and they're huge feet, and they aren't. Now, I love my feet because they get me where I need to go.
Love that. Gratitude.
Right. Yeah. But they hurt when I'm going a long way. And so now you understand my point here, is that just like when I would feel the pain in my feet, sometimes there are going to be moments when you feel like you can't go any further. And what I learned by walking long distances, which I still do, is if I just take the next step and the next, if you do it one step at a time, you get where you need to go. But when you are thinking, oh my God, I've got miles before I'm ever going to reach it, you can't get there. So if your motivation is, I've got to complete this, and you're only focused on the end, you miss the magic and the opportunity of the moment, which is it is much more manageable one little step at a time. So you're doing it today. You're going to do today. And then when it gets bad, you just get back to it and take it a little bit at a time.
I was just about to ask that. I was going to ask, what happens if you trip and you feel like you've taken a few steps backwards? You just said you just get back up and do it again. How do you motivate yourself to do that if you feel really tough? If you just feel like, how do you do it?
I am going to quote a very famous guru. His name is Bob Wright, and he is the heart of Hilton Head Health, and he's been here since the very first time I came here. And Bob once said, if you're on vacation and you make the wrong turn, you don't just turn the car around and go home. You just find the right road and get back on it, right?
Right.
And I just always have to remember that, is that, yeah, I got off the path, all I got to do is find it again and start going. I don't have to start over. And honestly, whether it's weight loss or any significant change in your life, it's not a clear path. It involves obstacles and wins and losses. And one thing that they certainly teach us here is that the scale may not reflect what you're doing. Now, how many people have blown a program because they should have lost weight and didn't, and they got discouraged?
Too many times.
Right. I mean, it's like, oh my God, I thought I was going to lose 5 pounds this week, and I gained a pound. And your body just doesn't do it according to your dreams and desires, and you have to be ready for that. And so I have a list of things that we were told to write down that we feel when we're losing weight that have nothing to do with the number on the scale, and it's posted above my scale. So it's like, but your clothes feel great. My heart is healthier. My breathing is good. I'm just more energetic. I'm sleeping better. So you go through that whole list, and you get motivation to get back at it instead of saying, well, that didn't work, so I'm just going to go get some Hostess snowballs and protest, right?
Right.
Or
So,
a bag of Cheetos.
so you collect these other measures besides the scale, and if you ever do face a week where the scale doesn't reflect what you think it should say, you've got these other things to look at and say, well, look how far I've come here. I don't want to lose those by ditching the scale.
Right.
Yeah.
And sometimes, I've learned this too, you can really con yourself because you might cheat a little and then you get on the scale and, boy, pulled that one off. And then my clothes still feel good, right? And so I'll just do it this week. Well, and then it's getting toward the holidays, right? And you keep doing it. And that is how you suddenly gain 20 pounds. And once you've gained 20 pounds, you're so mad at yourself and so depressed, then you get 10 more and 10 more and 10 more. I have lived this challenge my entire life, right? It's so easy to get discouraged and go crazy. And for me, I just am very vigilant about weighing in, but not letting the scale own me. It's like if after 2 weeks I'm getting bad numbers that I'm not expecting, then I'm probably not doing something right.
So it sounds like you've adopted a healthy relationship with the scale, and that it's just another measure. It's a data point that informs you, and if you notice it's starting to go outside of a boundary, it's kind of a wake-up call for you.
Well, and I have to have that healthy relationship with
Yeah.
it. I mean, they have smart scales now, and believe me, the big thing is don't be obsessed with the scale, but the thing that has been the best to keep me within range, right? I mean, I have, I think, 5 weeks of hard work here that I got to do, and I'll be right where I want to be. But the thing that has kept me from having to spend a year doing it is that I have a smart scale, and I tell myself, I don't care what I'm eating, I'm going to get on it every single day. And it logs all the numbers in my phone, and sometimes I don't want to see that number. I mean, it's just, sometimes it's horrific. But it's not 20 pounds, or 30. So I'm in much greater control because of it.
So did you always have a healthy relationship with the scale?
No,
How did you get to that point?
Because what I used to do was I would weigh myself, and then I would go by how my clothes fit. And clothes will work with you for a while, even when you're gaining weight. And then you'd be like, oh, where did that come from? And I knew for a long time people said, don't weigh yourself every day. But, it just works best for me to do that. And before, when I wasn't doing it, it would be like, oh, my God, where did this 20 pounds come from? And then here's a meltdown. And, the whole psychological thing, I have to start all over. Whereas now, I don't have to at all.
Yeah.
I just know, get back on it. Do what you have to do.
So it's part of your routine. It's what you do. Yeah. It's such a common question that we get, which is how often should I weigh myself? And it really depends on the person. Yeah. But so you mentioned Bob. I'm going to reference Bob too. He has a recommendation that is, when you're losing weight, to weigh less often than you have the urge to, but maybe like once a week or something like that. But when you've achieved your goal or you're close to it, or you're in weight maintenance phase, to weigh yourself more often than you have the urge to.
Well, I would never dispute one thing Bob Wright ever says.
Yeah.
Dude's wise, right? But for me, though,
yeah.
I did while I was losing, and I always was. I want to know. I'm a former journalist. I need that information.
And the caveat to that, though, is it really depends on the person.
Yeah.
If you're able to get a healthy relationship with the scale, I think Weight Watchers or Noom, some other companies do recommend weighing every day, and for a lot of people that works.
Well, it was interesting that when I really started watching it, I got that scale right at the beginning of 2020, and so everybody else was gaining weight during COVID, and I was losing, and that when I got bored, I live by myself. You would think that somebody who lives by themselves is going to be more prone to binge eating because there's nothing to do and nothing going on. But all I did was I weighed every day, and when I got bored, I grabbed my dog and I went for a walk. Oh, as long as we're sharing tips.
Yes.
I believe one of the greatest things that you can do for yourself if you want to lose weight is get yourself a good dog. And I mean a dog that can walk some distance. Because there may be days where I don't feel like it, but he's not going to give me a pass.
Right.
And I made the mistake during COVID, because it was always, 3-4 miles in the morning. But during COVID, since there was nothing else to do, I started walking him at night too. Well, now he expects it. And that's really good for me. Oh, yeah. So, y'all don't need to be walking 8 miles a day, but a dog forces you to get out there, get some fresh air, and it's really good for your morale. And, and if we are going to talk about the motivation for exercise, okay, some of you may not like exercise. I'm one of the people who earlier in my life didn't exercise at all, but about age 20, I realized I kind of enjoyed it. And so for me to have time to be a Hilton Head and spend all day, every day just working out, that's a gift. If you're not crazy about exercise, give it a chance and be positive about it. Don't start complaining. Don't commiserate, because you're going to feel so good from what it's doing for you that you're going to end up liking it. And it will change everything about your life, specifically your health. I mean, just your medical condition. And, as I'm getting older and watching people get more severe illness and die, I realize that the best thing that we've got going for us is exercise. And, I was telling you earlier, David, about a cycling accident that I had a couple of years ago, and it was really quite bad. It was just a head injury. The rest of me was fine, but that was a really bad experience with long-term issues that I had to fight. And the one thing that every one of the doctors told me is, work out. What are your workouts? And I said, I swim. And they said, you get in the pool every day. And it's like everything you have to do comes from being fit, because especially for brain health, they're showing that for, Alzheimer's, dementia, all of that stuff, that if you're exercising, you can survive a lot more and postpone things because you're so healthy. So if you're not a lover of exercise, just decide to give it a shot and be positive. Because then when you start feeling really good, then the motivation will just be natural. It's instinctive.
We talk in our Mastering Motivation class, we talk about external versus internal motivation. I'm curious if this is something that you ever explore, using external motivators or finding internal motivators, or if you look at motivation in that way. And I was wondering if you could talk to that.
I think with exercise, it's both.
It's both.
Right. I mean, that there certainly, you could go both ways on that. For me, the one leads to the other.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So you mentioned something that I wanted to make sure I asked you about, which is, you mentioned to me yesterday that motivation is based on restarts and not based on starts.
Right.
Can you explain what you mean by that?
Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
Because if you're hesitating to get started, just start with the understanding that it's not going to be a clear line. And this is whether it's weight or anything else. So, like you said, I'm a keynote speaker, and one of the slides that I love the most is how we envision our path to our goal. So the first frame of the slide is a bicycle and a mountain, right? And people expect a straight shot to the top where they're going to get to their goal and the sun is going to shine. And it's not like that. You know, and the second one shows that what it really is that you're riding your bike up the mountain, and then there's a quick drop, and you got to climb over a boulder field, and then you climb up again, and then you have to traverse a ladder, and then it drops down, and you're and have to cross a moat, and then you come up, and then there's a big storm, and then there's something else, and then you finally get to the top, and then the sun shines, because it's to tell you that the reward comes after you've had a lot of obstacles. But you know what's wrong with that image is that you get there, the sun shines, right? But the truth is, we're never there. And don't be upset, people, if you want to know that there's going to be a day where you don't have to worry about it. I'm waiting for that day. It hasn't happened yet. So I've kind of made peace with the fact that when you get to the top, there's another obstacle. And that's what life is. And that's okay. Because as we do this and get through this, we are growing our resilience. So this is not just about the scale or weight or anything else. It's about your growth as a human being and what you're learning on the way. And that if you're able to keep getting up every time you get knocked down, you win by just being on that path. And so, right, we want to get on a diet or get on a plan and lose a bunch of weight and then find out that we're just, going to look like some beautiful model and everything's going to be happy. But you know what? That stuff doesn't happen. It's just like, let's get real. It's going to be something that we deal with, but we don't have to fight with. That's the big thing, is once you understand that you start and restart and that you just always keep your mind on the ultimate, keep moving forward. That's the process. It's not getting there. It's moving forward and understanding you're imperfect. Many people have issues with anxiety and depression because they're stuck on perfection. And then the more, like if it comes out in food and they gain weight, then they're not perfect, and then they have low self-esteem, and then this is, that whole cycle. You're not perfect, and this path isn't perfect. But if you're willing to always get up and fight again and again, then you win. And I had a mom that had a really bad stroke, and after her stroke, she rehabbed for a long time. She was paralyzed, fought her way back, broke a hip. Had to start all over again, broke the other hip, could never get out of the wheelchair after that. But it was always one obstacle after another. And I said, how do you keep starting over? It's so hard. And she said, it doesn't matter what happens to you. It's what you do with it that matters. And then you realize it's really about the path you're on and that what you're learning. So if you've had a problem with your weight, I assure you, you're not alone. And I assure you that if you have problems with self-esteem, that's a universal. When I started doing books, I started interviewing great women leaders. And eventually asked men this too, but early on I interviewed this woman, and she was buku rich, right? She was the founder of Nature's Sunshine Vitamins, a company she had started with $150 and an idea. And she had 7 kids and no college degree, and Nature's Sunshine will make $500 million this year. And I said, well, what's your leadership strategy? And she said, well, I get up in the morning and I try to find something that fits me because I'm overweight, and then I go out in the world and do the best I can. And I stopped her and I said, wait, let's talk about your weight. Because that had been my problem my whole life, right? So let's talk about your weight. And she sighed. She says, do you know what it is like to be overweight and be the CEO of a wellness company. And I said, but I just read this article on you. You have 5 houses and all of this money, and you've achieved everything any of us would ever want to achieve. And I said, do you mean the reward for all of that is not good self-esteem? And she said, no. Well, then I started asking everybody that I interviewed that. And I found out that almost universally, men, women, they all have something that makes them feel less than, that makes them feel like they've messed up, like they don't count, like they're not worthy. And
what do you make of that?
I make of it that it's a bunch of BS. And that's why even when I weighed 100 pounds more, I had pretty good self-esteem, because I then knew that that game of self-esteem is a number we're playing on ourselves. It's BS. It's just all the negativity we put in our heads. Once when I was a reporter, I interviewed this professor whose life work was on studying how people perceive their flaws. And I said, well, what got you into this? And she goes, can't you tell? And I'm like, no. She goes, my lisp. Don't you hear my lisp? And I hadn't even heard it. And this thing that to her was so pronounced that she spent her entire life researching flaws was something that was, imperceptible to me.
Based on a perceived flaw of
Right, right. And that's what we do with ourselves. So yeah, okay. Like, let's just say, and we don't use this word, but since I was it, I can say it. Like, if I was really fat, let me tell you something. I would go to the beach. I don't care what I weighed. I loved the beach. I would put on a bathing suit and go to the beach. And believe me, there were many times, David, it wasn't pretty. I know we're not supposed to say the word fat, but I was fat. I was really fat. And let me tell you something. Fat people are allowed to go to the beach too. And I went to the beach all the time because I love the beach. And I knew that there would be a lot of people who would see me and go, wow, look at that fat lady on the beach. And you know what I figured? If they think about that for a minute, okay, because I'm fat. But if they think about it for any more than a minute, they're the one with a problem. And that's when I began to forgive myself, right? And so, for those of you who are listening, you're fine. And let me tell you this one. My best friend was overweight, and she was always complaining about being too fat. And because of her weight, she had giant breasts. So she complained about being fat and having these great big boobs. And then she got breast cancer. And it was not caught early. And she would have done anything to have that healthy, overweight body with the big boobs. So on those days when I'm feeling fluffy, my mantra, and I give this to all of you, is a healthy body is a perfect body. And let me say it again. A healthy body is a perfect body. And so now the decision for you is not perfection, because you've got that if you're healthy. And if you're not healthy, what can you do to get healthy? The question is, what's the first step? It's not what is the next 100 steps. It's what's the first thing you can do to make yourself feel better. And like I said, it's do it for 2 days. Just commit for 2 days, and you're going to feel better. So what I'm about to tell you, and you, is something I believe with my soul. And that is, you can reprogram your brain with affirmations. Now that sounds like all that woo-woo,
That Saturday Night Live
right,
skit.
What was that guy's Smiley? What was his name? Oh, yeah. Gosh darn it, people like me, right? And it sounds like a bunch of hooey. But the science is right there, which is your brain is like a hard drive. Okay, so what have we put on that all along? I'm fat, I'm ugly, people don't want to see me, I can't go there, how did I let this happen to myself? All of this negativity. But you can reprogram your brain if you use affirmations. And they have to be written a certain way, which is in the positive. So you don't say, I don't like junk food. You say, I love healthy foods. You don't say, I'm going to stop eating right when I'm full. You say, I can always eat more later when I'm hungry, right? So if you say something for 2 weeks and you do it 50 times a day for 2 weeks, and then the next 2 weeks, 25 times a day, and then the next 2 weeks, 10 times a day, those thoughts become your brain.
Can I ask you something about that?
Yeah.
So, because it sounds like you've been doing this a lot and helping a lot of people with it.
And helping myself.
And helping yourself with
Yeah.
it. How important is it that you believe the affirmation? So, like, if it feels like you're lying to yourself versus...
That is the question.
Yeah, that's the question. Like, will it still make a difference if you just 100% don't believe it?
Right. So, the one thing, let me finish on that. So
Sure.
you do 50 times a day for 2 weeks, 25 times a day for 2 weeks, 10 times a day for 2 weeks. And then when the negativity creeps back in because it's been there longer than the positivity, then you start and you do it again a little more. Okay. You do have to be receptive to it. But studies have shown that people who do this for weight loss and self-esteem have improvements and lose weight without even changing their behavior if they do it right. Okay. And they studies have shown that. So
Without
I think
intentionally changing their behavior, is it like
right but I think if they're saying it like that, on some level they're open to it.
Right.
But, and here's the but, and I'm going to do it from experience because I told you I had that horrific year when everybody died.
Yes.
You know, you lose 2 parents in 3 months, but I knew I had the magic of affirmations, so I immediately wrote affirmations for grief so that I wouldn't have to go through it so much, right? And it was, I can do this by myself. I was loved by my parents. I'm healing. Every day I'm feeling stronger. And I wasn't up to it. I just didn't believe it. Grief has to own you for a certain... Grief is bigger than anything, okay? So I had to acknowledge that. But there was one thing I said that was an affirmation that really got me through that year. And it's this line in a song, and David, you're too young to know this song, but it's this group Chicago. And the song went, and I know some of you will know this, it would say, knowing that you would have wanted it this way, I do believe I'm feeling stronger every day. And I bet you I said that thousands of times. Because it was my way of communicating that to my parents and beginning the healing. And I believe that that led me to doing it. I think ultimately I did a good job of grieving. But I had to learn you can't skip it. Now, when it comes to using these for self-esteem, what do you think is going to be better for your brain? I am fat and nobody likes me, or I am beautiful and people want to be around me?
Well, the positive one is what I would say.
Right. And so, and the one thing about being at H3, which if you're not familiar, H3, Hilton Head Health, okay.
Thank you
My
for that.
favorite place, right. But the thing about that is that when you are around people who are so accepting of you, and this is your tribe, you're going to be with people who are going to bring you like this. And you're going to change their lives and they're going to change yours. And when you're with them, then it is easier to understand you are worthy and that you're on a path towards strong self-esteem. Do affirmations make up for the need for therapy? No. But with therapy, what a partnership, right? So it's like, you know, I don't want to tell people you can avoid depression if you just say these things. Well, clinical depression is a real thing. And so I'm always careful in teaching that. But, you know, there's different kind of depression. And situational depression is what I had from losing my parents. And it absolutely, you know, the walking, got me through.
That's powerful. So you were able to find the song lyric, really, which connected with you. It resonated with you. And it was almost like your gateway to go through grief and then get back into affirmations.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And then I did.
Yeah.
Right. But I think I don't know if with one death it would be easier. I don't know. But for me, a year was the mark. And then at a year I was able to say, okay, you need to either get medicated or do something. And that is when I started that beach walk, because I thought, okay, I got to take my power over this. And by walking and walking and walking, I healed. And by the end of that 70 miles, I saw myself in the mirror again. And if you're not seeing your best self when you look in the mirror, that person is right there in front of you. You may not think you look great. I know somebody who has a picture on LinkedIn from when she was in college, and she's 70 years old because she hates how much she looks so much. It's not, I mean, this is your life. You're a good person no matter what you look like, right? Bet on yourself. You're enough. And now just take that first step to doing one thing and then the next and then the next. And you're going to be healthy, and give yourself permission to be happy. And when you do that, then you have permission to love yourself unconditionally, because you're fine. You're fine. Don't buy into that negative, because that is a lie.
That's really like a fascinating paradox that when you, for people who feel like they're not enough, they find it really challenging to change. But for people who do love themselves and accept themselves, they feel that they're enough, and yet they want to get better still. And they want to take care of themselves because they love themselves.
Yeah. And, you know, I feel like as far as life, like I've been running a scam, because I've had two careers, first as a journalist and then as a speaker and an author. And my work has been fun every day of my life, right? I mean, it's just been fun. And then I've lived a life such that I've prioritized time over, workaholism. So I've had more fun than anybody I know. And, I'm a big kayaker, and I'm just always, sunset looks good, I'm going to do that. And it doesn't matter where you are on this journey, you can be happy today. Every day is 24 hours that you can fill with goodness. We all have obligations, we have stresses, but we only have this day, and then tomorrow, and then the next. And then at some point, we run out of days. So for me, I made a conscious decision back in my 20s that I was going to live every day as fun as I could live it. And, I started out as a workaholic, and I was doing a series, and my boss made me get my time card back and write down every minute I had worked, because I think they had a wage and hour lawsuit, so they were trying to be legit for 1 week, right? But fortunately, it was the week where I worked 87 hours. And I went and I had to get my time card. And David, that was when you had to do it on paper, right?
Oddly enough, when I first started at Hilton Head Health, a few of our part-timers were still using time cards.
Okay, so I had to get my time card from this woman who was the assistant to the managing editor, and I got it, and I wrote it all down. And she looked at it and she goes, "Gee, Fawn, is it even worth it?" So I'm 24 years old, and I thought, it's not. It's like I knew then that I would still work hard some weeks like that, but I wouldn't take the overtime. I'd take the comp time, because time is everything. And so if you are losing time to feeling bad about yourself and less than, all you have to do is take the first step. And, if you're not used to an exercise regimen, one thing I did years ago was tell myself that all I had to do was put my shoes on and walk to the end of the driveway. And if I wanted to come back in, I could. But I had to be out there dressed to go. And then, but other than that, I could come back without guilt. I've known people who were multi-millionaires, and they're the most miserable people I know, right? And I've made a good living in my life. And if I had worked harder, I could have made better, right? But I always prioritized life. for me, having a mom who had a stroke at 66 when I was in my early 30s, that made me realize life is perishable and that you don't know what's coming, so you better do it now. And so I've lived very large. And I think that's one thing that I learned at H3 a long time ago, was that it doesn't matter if you are in your 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s. I have seen some people who are real seniors coming and changing their lives because it's possible. Your body is willing to do that for you. Just give it a little chance.
My last question for you is, if you could give just one tip around motivation, what would that be?
Forgive yourself when you're not perfect, because nobody's perfect. If it doesn't go the way you expect, just try again tomorrow. One more step, the next step, and the next, and you get where you need to go.
So why is it that you love Hilton Head so much? Why do you keep coming back?
Well, not just because of you and H3, which is, such a game changer for me, but it's the environment. And this is a lesson for all of you. I get up for sunrise. I am someone who appreciates sleeping in more than any of you, but I force myself to get up for sunrise every day I'm here because I live on the west coast of Florida. They have the best sunrises here. I never want to get up for them, and I've never once regretted them. And that is a gift to yourself, is to get up early, watch the sun come up, and start your day with happiness.
Love that. I still pinch myself that I live in Hilton Head. It's just so beautiful here. Yeah. So how can people stay connected with you? If they want to continue to be inspired by you, be motivated by you, how can they find you?
Well, you can, my website, fawngermer.com, my Facebook page, and I'm on LinkedIn, I'm on all of those things, but really I'm on Facebook. Find my personal one, because that's the fun one, and that's the one I pay most attention to, because I'm not crazy for social media like some people. I just like to go play and show people that I took a pretty sunrise picture.
I love watching your kayaking pictures and videos and swimming with the manatees.
Yeah. What fun is that?
Yeah. And you have a podcast?
I do.
And people can find that?
That's everywhere. Spotify, Apple, Amazon, all of them. So that's called the Hard-Won Wisdom Podcast. And that is a good dose of inspiration, fun, and wisdom for everybody. Well,
Fawn, this has been amazing. You are full of, as your podcast name suggests, you're full of wisdom and stories and inspiration. So I can't thank you enough for joining us today, and hopefully we'll have you get on again sometime.
Yay, I would love that.
Cool. And if you found this helpful back home, if you want to see more videos like this, please send us messages. Tell us what you want to hear about. Tell us what you want to learn about. We are ultimately here for you. This is for you, so let us know what you want to see from us. So we'll see you next time.